doing, Sri Swami?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Good. I was looking at some of the comments on our latest video together, and they were stellar. Everybody wants you back. And so we are accommodating them now. So that's awesome. And today we are going to talk, or you are going to discuss reincarnation. That's kind of a tricky subject because there is no linear time. So I remember that Erik kind of described it as a couple of ways, that you have this all your lives like a stack of books, and you just happen to be reading one of those books. That doesn't mean the other books aren't there. But I also like his wagon wheel analogy, and I think I've told you this before. But don't tell me I did, because it'll embarrass me. I know my memory's bad. No, I'm kidding. Not about the memory, though. So he said that it's like a wagon wheel, and at the hub is our higher self. All the spokes are different lives we're living, past, present, and future. And as it turns in the mud, it leaves a track, and that's our linear timeline. But I want your perspective.
Okay, so Erik is correct as usual. What we have to understand is that in the other realms, time doesn't exist. So if time doesn't exist, then how do we reconcile our present existence?
Right.
And that's the fundamental key. And the way he described it as the wagon wheel, that's exactly what it is. So what happens is that as a soul, we reincarnate for a specific purpose, which is to learn the lessons that we need to learn in this particular frame. Okay, and so the moment we are created, that's when time begins for us, and that's why astrology works.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, the connection with astrology. Okay.
Yeah. So whenever something is created, it's only created as an event, and that event has to come to an end. Whenever there's death, okay, and there is a time span. So what happens is that we sort of downgrade, the soul sort of downgrades and goes into a more sort of gross level.
Okay.
It's like, for instance, when you enter your car while driving, you get into your car, you embody yourself into this vehicle. And for the purpose of the vehicle, your destination, your journey, there is a time frame from the beginning of the journey to the time you get out of your car. Unless you have an accident, of course.
Well, that would be your destination.
That's right. So the thing is that we are in a higher plane and higher dimensions, and when we come into incarnation, we then lower into a lower vibration, and that brings in the dimension of time. But time doesn't exist the moment we die.
Well, what about, how is it related to a lower vibration?
Okay, so when you talk about, you probably might have heard of ascension.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so our souls are in a higher subtle vibration. They're in a much subtle vibration. That means higher vibration.
Okay.
So, for instance, we as human beings, we are subtle bodies. Earth, a chair, furniture, they are the same vibration, but lower vibration. And that's the difference, essentially. What we do is we go from lower vibration and we ascend to a higher vibration.
Why? Why does it happen?
Because we need to learn the lessons in lower vibration. We can't learn the lessons in higher vibration.
But why are we ascending now?
Oh, so even within the incarnation, within this time frame, there are many levels. So it's like grade school, right? So you go to elementary school, and within elementary school, there's 7 grades. Doesn't mean you are in secondary school or in higher education, in high school or college. So we as human beings, we're in elementary school, essentially. And
I'm in the remedial class.
And you're doing pretty well. You're probably
Oh.
the prefect there, kind of keeping everybody straight.
Yeah, sure.
So essentially, even within the elementary school, we also are ascending within the smaller levels. Of course, then when we ascend to a higher level, we probably then go to high school or college or university. So our gradation of learning depends on where we are to begin with and the lessons we need to learn in that particular lifetime, which is why we incarnate.
Okay.
So every incarnation, there's one singular purpose, which is the lessons you need to learn in this lifetime. All of our relationships, our work, our environment, where we are born, they're just merely the environment or the conditions that enables us to learn whatever we need to learn.
Well, now ascending.
So that's how it
ascension
works. Now.
Oh.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, my internet connection. I don't know. But ascension is a process, and that implies the passage of time. So that's hard to reconcile, but I guess it's because we're in our human bodies and linear time exists when we're in a body. Okay.
Exactly.
I just answered my own question.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So whenever we bring in the element of growth, ascension is essentially growth. And whenever we're talking about growth, that it inherently implies time.
That's true.
And so when we come here, we incarnate as human beings for two reasons, because this lifetime as a human being is the greatest way and the fastest way, by the way, to learn. It's like we're on the express lane. Now, of course, in other dimensions and in other worlds, we do learn, but not in the way we can as human beings.
Because it's more contrast and polarity, duality.
Exactly.
You can't know the hot unless you experience cold. You can't understand forgiveness unless you are betrayed or something like that.
Absolutely. But then they also provide the learning opportunities. But more important is that it's our free will that comes into play. In other dimensions, free will doesn't exist.
Oh.
And so we don't learn because you just go like in a robotic or mechanized way. You just do what everybody does because everybody knows what needs to be done, and it's just a process.
Okay.
So there's basically in the lower worlds, which is the animal world, for instance, they just ascend by giving up their lives for a greater cause.
Oh.
And that's why you find in the animal kingdom, the lion eats other animals. So when they do that, their life gets ascended into a higher vibration.
Wait, which does, the lion or the prey?
No, the prey.
Yeah, I figured, yeah. I always feel guilty when I weed in my flower beds. Oh, I'm so sorry, but you don't belong here. I'm so sorry.
I know. And that is also true, by the way, for our young men and women who are in the army. And when they give up their lives, they ascend because they've made the greatest sacrifice.
Yes.
So then they ascend too. So when you talk about reincarnation, first of all, let me back up and say that to me, reincarnation is not a belief. It's a fact of life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I know. You know it. But most people ask me, like, do you believe in reincarnation? And I'm saying, no, I do not believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation to me is a fact of life. We have to take it as a fact of life. Now, here's the thing, is that if reincarnation is a fact of life, that means our life goes beyond our present life. And so we kind of have to see our behavior and our transactions, not only in terms of this particular life, but all the other lives we're in or that we will be in. So the reason law of karma works is because what I do today comes back to me not only in this lifetime, it probably will come back to me in another lifetime if it doesn't in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So if I kill someone in this lifetime, of course, in another lifetime, that person has to come back to kill me.
Mm.
So we continue these lives of hurting each other until one of us gains the wisdom of knowing, hey, I have this passion and the greatest desire to kill this person, but I'm not going to do it because it's the wrong thing to do.
Mm.
And that's when
Right.
we have not only learned our lesson, but we have learned to forgive the person who has done us a lot of harm.
Yes.
You know, and
Absolutely.
that's how we ascend. So the unfortunate thing in life is that we don't realize our lives, our present lives, in context of all the lives we have.
Yeah, and isn't there bleed through from other lives? Certain things you're experiencing, or certain emotions, etc. Like all of a sudden at 23, you just have this urge to kill yourself, and then if you get past life regression, you find out that that you killed yourself, and at that age when you accidentally drowned your baby or something. I just made that up. So
Yeah,
there's bleed through you have to be
it's
aware of.
true. Every experience we have had in the past life, traumatic or good experiences, we carry over.
Yeah.
So when we die, this is kind of important that we really need to understand this. There are three things we take with us when we die. One is that we take the wisdom from the lessons we have learned in this lifetime. That is the only carryover we take with us. Then the second thing we take with us is all the good deeds we did in this particular lifetime. And the third thing we take with us is all the negative or harmful things that we did. So we can say positive. I don't try to categorize things in terms of bad or good, but karma, or in terms of how experiences are positive or negative based on how I experience it. So if I've done some harm to somebody else, that negative experience that the other person felt is going to come back to me, and I'm going to experience that in a negative way. It doesn't mean it's bad or good.
No, everything is just experiences. That's what Erik says. There's no good, there's no bad.
Exactly.
Everything is a valuable experience. It depends on if you turn them into teachable moments, of course.
Exactly. And this is our limitation, is we don't understand how to turn that around to make it as a positive learning experience.
Yeah.
In fact, I say many times that without pain, we cannot learn. There's no other way, really.
Yeah.
And it is because of pain that gives us the opportunity to actually grow.
What can't we learn from other people's mistakes?
We can if we're smart.
Yeah.
Many times we're not.
Yeah.
And many times we're stubborn.
Yeah.
So, the example I give is like, a child, don't play with fire. It will burn you, right? But a son will typically not listen. They'll stick their finger in the fire and say, hey, let me try it and see what it really burns.
Of course.
Maybe a girl might not do that, but a guy, we tend to be a bit stubborn. So we want to.
One of my daughters did, yeah. No, it's...
So the whole idea of reincarnation is primarily to actually exhaust our actions of positive or negative actions that we have accumulated, and also to learn. Every lifetime is here for the sole purpose of learning, and that learning gives us a certain wisdom, and that wisdom is what the soul needs, and it then carries it over to another lifetime.
Well, is there ever a point when you've gotten rid of all the negatives and you don't have any more lessons to learn?
No.
Wow.
That's the problem. Because just look at it this way, okay? So according to our Indian scriptures, we are reincarnated as human beings about 840,000 lifetimes.
Oh, wow. That makes me tired just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And if you start doing the math, it's insane.
Yeah.
But then many of us die. Many of us actually die in like within a year or 2 years. So you'll find that if you take an average, it's a very, very long time.
Oh yeah.
So now here's the key: is that in each lifetime we do horrible things.
Yeah.
We hurt people. We hurt animals. We do it knowingly, unknowingly, and unintentionally. But we do harmful things.
Yeah.
And also, we also do good things. somebody needs help, and we're there. We, give them what help they need. So in every lifetime, we pile on the good deeds and the bad deeds.
Yeah.
The positive deeds and the negative deeds, every lifetime. So he starts thinking about 840,000 lifetimes. That's a lot of deeds that we did that we can never recover. And frankly, we all have been murderers, rapists, criminals, things like that. There's no escape from that. Yes. However, the only reason why we don't have an inclination to hurt someone or kill someone now or rape someone at this point is only because we have gone through the wisdom. We've gone through the experience that taught us that by doing these things, we're going to hurt someone, and we are inclined naturally, innately, to not do that.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so we've gained those. In fact, if you look at 4 or 5-year-old kids, you'll see amongst them, like if you look at the class of kids in KG, you'll see 1 or 2 of them, they're super bright. They have the wisdom beyond their years.
Yes.
And that's exactly how they come in here, is that we bring the wisdom that we carry with us. Now, Erik, for instance, he may be young in this lifetime, but he's a very old soul who has had a lot of experiences and wisdom, which is why he's able to share it.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Well,
and so,
I remember my son Lucas, I didn't know anything about reincarnation, but when he was around 4, he had really high fever, and I was holding him, and, I'd just given him a bath, a cool bath. And he started talking about how Maria was my daddy and Papa was my mommy, and he was dancing, twirling around on a cliff with he was a girl in a plantation owner family, and he had some sort of seizure and fell off the cliff. And then he said he went in the water and he saw the bubbles coming up, and then he was in a dark, warm place, a womb. So it's like, what? And I was getting my eldest daughter to write this all down. So I checked out this book by Carol Bowman, Bowman, Children's Past Lives. And it's amazing, the account after account after account of indisputable evidence.
That's right. And one of the things I do, which I don't tell people, is when I come across my friends who have kids, I don't have any kids, but if they kids that happen to be under 5 years old, and they can speak some English, because in my travels, not all kids speak English. But then when they do, I ask them to tell me a story. And I get them to be relaxed. And when they start telling me a story, it's about their past lives.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So all kids, without exception, remember the very last life until they're about 4 or 5 years old.
Why? What happens then?
Well, it's the programming of life and parents and culture that says, no, you're wrong, you're crazy. That's just a fantasy. Don't think like that. Don't say that, So you find that kids are not encouraged to remember that, and they feel, and children, when they see that, especially because of their reality that they're in right now, they feel when a parent tells them, don't say that, don't talk about it, oh, you're crazy, stop that silliness, that kind of thing. They stop going there. But some kids will actually remember very detailed past lives, like your son Lucas, And so, but every kid does that.
Yeah.
And one way to find out, and I encourage all my friends or anyone that I come across who have kids under 5, is to get the kids to relax, rest, and especially before bed, is to have them tell you a story. And they start telling you a story based on their past lives. And if you actually trace back, you'll be able to find out that was their very last life. In fact, there were scientific studies. This is an actual study done by here in the US, that the first sounds that a child makes is sounds from a language they spoke in the past life.
Oh, my grandkid, he seemed like he spoke a completely different language. It was like I could hear certain things repeated, but it was clearly not just baby babbling. So,
exactly.
And then there's a story about this father he passed by his twin daughters or whatever, a room, and they were speaking a language that he didn't recognize, but he felt it was a language. He recorded it, took it to a linguistics expert, and the guy said, that's Aramaic. So that's cool.
Right. That's right. And so I do encourage people to record the first sounds that babies make. And then you'll inevitably at some point find out the language that they spoke and the culture. And as they grow to be adults, one of the things that happens is that they gravitate towards visiting that culture or that country.
Yeah.
So most of the times when we travel overseas, it's usually a place we lived before. And the karmas from the past life that are still there, residual, that we want to connect back in this lifetime. There are places also that we've had negative experiences or horrible experience, and we don't even want to think about going back there.
Yeah, that's what I did with China and Japan. For some reason, I have absolutely no interest in going there. I'm not averse to those countries. I don't think, maybe on a subconscious level, but I just don't. That's just one of the two places I never want to go.
Right. And so that means you probably had a past life there that you were done with, or you might have had negative experiences. But basically what happens is when you end up going to a place like that, like you'll find some people might travel and have horrible experiences where they go, that's simply because during the past life they had some negative residual experiences that they are reconnecting with.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I remember Annika, my youngest, when she was little, she always talked about this horse Milo. So I kind of, after the thing with Lucas, I thought, well, I'll learn how to do past life regression in my own little, simplistic way. And she talked about a life where she was basically at the end of her life, she was little. She had this horse Milo, and the barn caught on fire and collapsed on both of them. So, and then this one, I decided to go ahead and try Erik when he was a little older. And, I did the whole sequence, and he saw himself on a cliff with a horrible headache. And the headache was so bad that he misstepped and fell off the cliff, died, leaving a wife and a couple of kids. And Erik started sobbing. So it must have been
exactly, a past life. And many times when it shows up in this particular lifetime is because there's a healing to be done, or there's something that is incomplete. So all relationships that we have, like, when we have kids, parents, the people we work with, the people who are under us when we're employed, or people who are our bosses, like pretty much everybody that we interact with, we have a past life connection with. I mean, I tell people that, for instance, you go to a restaurant and the waiter is serving you, past life connection, because you served that person in another lifetime. So it's not an unusual thing. We just make a big deal because we don't know what's going on. But basically, every person that we interact with, we have a past life. I'm talking about significant interactions. We're not talking about just past life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
For instance, you're driving somewhere and you need directions, and somebody happens to be there, and they actually give you correct directions. But if they give you wrong directions, hey, past life karma, you gave that person wrong directions.
So, what are we really here to learn in these lives? I mean, Erik, I think, says to remember that we are loved, that we're not really here to learn anything. We're to relearn, to remember, because we actually know all this on a conceptual basis, not in an experiential basis. So we took organic chemistry class, but now we need to do the lab to totally fully understand organic chemistry.
Right. So let me put it this way. Every lifetime we're learning something, right? When does it end? Or, we say, well, it's good and fine that every lifetime we're coming here to gain some wisdom. So what? After we've gained all the wisdom out of 800,000 lifetimes, what are we going to do with that? The point is, and this is the fundamental crux of the whole deal, is that every lifetime we're trying to gain wisdom to get to a place where we can actually learn and see two things. One, that we are love, and that we need to respond and transact in love, because that is actually teaching us how to be evolved. And once we do that, it leads us to something very important. That something very important is to recognize that we're one, not just say that we're one, but to actually totally relate and recognize and be in that oneness.
Yeah.
When we get to that oneness state, here's the greatest reward. Once we get to a point where we can actually know without any doubt, without a shred of doubt, that we are one and nothing but one, that's when all our negative karmas and all our positive karmas, they all get wiped out. Mm. And when we then drop this body, we merge with the cosmic consciousness. This is the greatest reward.
So we merge with Source. It's like I hear that Source pretty much split itself off into little tendrils, us. Well, not split. I guess we did totally disconnect because everything is one. But in order to learn experientially the concept of love, all the facets of love, and then we come back and say, and bring it back to Source. I don't know.
Exactly. You merge in Source. Now, here's the example I give with that. So if you look at Source as this cosmic consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. So the analogy I use for that is the ocean. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the entire cosmic consciousness is the ocean. But what is the ocean? H2O, right? Mm-hmm. H2O, water, does not change. It can be in urine or in sewage, or it could be a glacier. It could be wet vapor, rain, every form of water that you can think of, lakes, rivers, streams, every Coca-Cola, tea, coffee. I mean, all of these things that has water. But here's what's so amazing about water is that it never gets modified by the thing that it carries. So if you're drinking coffee, water is there. The element of H2O does not get modified.
It doesn't change. Right.
Change, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly who we are. We are the Source. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea, the reason why we have thousands and thousands of lifetimes is for one purpose only. And that is that to know that we are H2O, we are water, and when we know we are water, we merge with the ocean. So it takes, like, you take a drop of water and you just drop it in the ocean, it just blends in, right? It doesn't see. So it ceases to exist as a soul. But that is the whole ultimate end. The moment you figure out that we are one, then this whole business of reincarnation comes to an end.
Well, I thought it never came to an end. So what does it feel like when you get sucked up by Source, so you don't have your individuality ever again? It's kind of scary.
No, it's not scary because you're part of the whole. I mean, you're not out as an individual. So basically, if you take a molecule of H2O away from ocean, mm-hmm. right? It goes up into vapor, and then it climbs over in the clouds, and it goes up to the Himalayas, for instance, on this mountain ranges. And from the top of the mountains, it goes down into streams and through trees and through plants and through animals and through human beings. And then it makes its way eventually to the ocean. Mm-hmm. So essentially what that simply does is that your identity merges into the ocean, rather than you don't have sort of an individual identity, but your identity merges, becomes part of the Source. So you are the Source, you're not separated from the Source.
Oh, but can you, if you want to, recreate that illusion of separation and be like Erik again, or Lisa, or...
Right. So you come back whenever, the cycle allows it. So because it is a cycle, it's an endless cycle.
Yeah.
So
sounds like it.
When does the H2O stop rising from the ocean?
Never. It's an eternal process, I guess, huh?
An eternal process. But then in terms of me as a soul, mm-hmm. we're gaining the wisdom. That means the soul has actually left the ocean and it's transmigrating into all these different forms. It hasn't changed to who it is.
Right.
We take all these forms, and eventually, when we recognize, we have to know that we are one. When we recognize that and know for sure, without a shred of doubt, that's when we merge with the ocean, after we drop this body.
So you're saying that we can merge with the cosmic collective eternally and never come back if we don't want to. Once we've achieved that.
That's right. You
But
don't exist as a soul again.
Oh, but if you want to, it's probably, you know,
if you want to. You see, most of the time, it's a huge, endless cycle. We're talking about billions and billions.
Oh, good God.
So, yeah, so it's not a question of saying, okay, you know, next week I'm going to reincarnate, I'm going to merge with the source, and then maybe, you know, 5 years from now I'm going to reincarnate again. Because that whole process of going through thousands of lifetimes is actually a very painful process. So it's not like we choose to want to come back. And you know, there's some lifetimes that are really nice, and we are fortunate to have houses and comforts that we have, particularly here in the U.S. But then one of the greatest problems that we have in the U.S. is inner peace. You know, so we struggle through our relationships, we struggle through pain, and in spite of having food and shelter and clothing in this lifetime, it doesn't mean that we will have that in another lifetime, because we've actually accumulated a lot of negative karmas that are piling up there, and we have to pay off our debts at some point.
Yeah. So, some of my wealthiest patients were some of the most unhappy people I've met. So so that's true. Being your authentic self and having inner peace is so important. Now, why are there? I mean, do you have to, like? What if you killed somebody and anyway you die and you know you're going to have to come back and get killed? You don't have to do that right away. I mean, there's free will in the afterlife too. Right. I mean, you can stall on it. Eventually you'll do it, but aren't there souls who like, I don't want to put that much on my plate this time. Maybe next time. Mañana. Right. So there is an element of free will, right?
Absolutely. And so this is the thing where we kind of have to understand the karma theory a lot more in a lot more detail, which probably we can do in another show. But just to give you a brief idea, to relate it to an analogy that we can relate to here on Earth.
I love your analogies. Oh gosh, you and Erik give the best analogies. Yeah. It really helps.
Thank you. Yeah, because that's the only way to communicate. I mean, I can talk about abstract concepts, but then if I cannot relate it to you, then, they're just like, okay, that was interesting, and let's move on. Let's have a, cup of coffee or something. But so look at it this way. You go to work, you have your monthly income, salary, or whatever, right? You do not take everything that you earn in this month and pay off all your debts. So what you do is that in each lifetime, you accumulate your wealth, your assets. And then you also accumulate your debts, like, mortgages and things like that. Okay, so that is your entire balance sheet for all your lifetimes.
Okay.
That's all piled up. So when just before you do your taxes, for instance, you have your balance sheet statement, which tells you what your liabilities are and what your assets are. So your liabilities are negative karma. Your assets are positive karma.
Well, do most of us have or in the red or the black? Are most of us in the red or the black?
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, positive karma is like golden chains, and the negative karma are iron shackles. They're chained no matter what. Yeah. The only way you wipe out the entire karmas, whether it's golden shackles or iron shackles, is by getting to a point where you actually know that you're one. And the entire purpose of suffering so much throughout all these lifetimes is to gain the wisdom to get to a point where you want to know this. And you then have to have enough positive karma to find the right teacher then to actually teach you that you are nothing but one with the source. And when you have that confidence, when you're totally sure that that is what it is in your heart and in your life, the way you behave, the way you talk, then when you drop this body, your soul merges with the cosmic
Mm. Can
consciousness.
you imagine if everybody knew and behaved knowingly that they are one with the collective? What
Yes,
this world would be
it's
like?
a totally different world. What
Oh
we talk
gosh.
about in our tradition is that we go through almost 8,000 years of cycles. Actually, even it's basically more like 15,000 years of different cycles. And right now we're in what we call the Kali Yuga, which means that we are in a period of darkness.
Mm.
So that's why there's so much, so much lack of awareness that we're one. And that's why we're doing a lot of harm to each other. But if we come to a point, there was like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, there was a period where people did actually know that we're all.
Really?
And
Was that
so
for the time of the mystics, the ancient mystics?
that's right,
Such?
yeah. So for instance, when we talk about the Lemurian time or the Atlantic times,
Yeah.
you go about 15 or 30,000 years back or 20,000 years back, that was when people actually knew around the world
Well, what
that.
happened? Why did we unlearn those lessons?
Well, it's the same thing about cycles, right? Day and night. Why does night happen?
Yeah,
Why
I
does
got
day
it.
happen? And so what happens is we come into duality. We come into this lifetime to experience the negative, so we understand and appreciate and learn the positive. We do not gain the wisdom without these contradictions.
Yeah.
If there are no contradictions, we wouldn't be learning. So I tell people, hey, when you go watch a movie, a great blockbuster, for instance, why do you enjoy that? Is because the evil was so evil and the good was so good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you went to a movie and there was no evil, it would be probably the most boring movie ever.
Oh, gosh. Like the movie North. That's got to be the worst. But with Elijah Wood, who I love. But anyway, I digress. All right, so what was the purpose of going through that period, 3,000 whatever years ago, of people being aware that they were one? That didn't, achieve any much soul growth, right?
No, what happens is, like every culmination, you start from ignorance and you come
Mhm.
to a point of understanding that we're all one. You find that even in that oneness, in that good positive thing, we take it for granted and we start committing mistakes.
Yeah. Ah.
You see, and when we start committing mistakes, we start degenerating.
Mm.
Yeah. And when you start degenerating, that's when we start creating harm, because what happens as human beings, we have our egos and we take our good things that are given to us, that we're blessed with, we take all of that for granted.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem begins, because, if I'm having a good life and if I'm blessed with all the positive things in life, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get arrogant.
Mm.
I'm going to get conceited.
Mm.
And in that, we start committing mistakes.
Oh.
And that's when the degeneration starts. Like for instance, if you look at the US, there was a time when, there was a really good positive time in the US. And now what has happened is that we're going through this degeneration process.
Yeah.
And so it's bringing out the contradictions. And, to be very frank, this is why Trump is there, is to bring out the contradictions so that we
Yeah.
can start healing.
Let's kick over the table. Make some
Exactly.
changes to that global elite, new world order, the corruption and at the top.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
part of that is to clear all of that. But on the other hand, what we need to do on an individual basis is find space in our hearts and in our minds to be able to respond to every situation with love and compassion.
Yeah.
But can we do that? Is the
We
question.
should be able to. I always remind myself, people who are the hardest to love are the ones who need it the most.
Exactly.
And that helps. Or you can imagine them as a very old person or a tiny innocent baby, and you could so shifting perspective is so powerful, as you know.
Exactly. And I tell what's more, I tend to watch this sometimes these commercials late at night, and they tell you, but wait, there's more.
I know. There's always more.
So the thing about doing good deeds is that you get positive karma.
Yeah. It feels good too.
It feels good. And, you know, when you are able to actually get to a place in your life where you can respond with love, oh my God, you know, it frees you emotionally. It frees you in so many ways. And then you also respond in love. Oh my God, you also get good karma from that. I mean, you know, it's a really good deal if we can get ourselves to that place.
You know, what's really very, a huge release is an apology. It's so powerful. It's so scary sometimes because people have their ego and their pride. But once you do it, it's amazing sometimes the response of the love you get back. Exactly. And the relief of that burden, right? Yeah. So right. Old souls, that does that have to do with time, or is it that those are the souls who tend to say, bring it on, put everything on my plate, I want a really crappy life?
Okay, so remember how I talked about our liabilities and assets? Mm-hmm. So old souls basically have a lot more wisdom already because they've been accumulated it over time. It's like now you move to if we use the analogy of school or education, it's like now you're on a PhD level and you want some serious lessons. You don't want to learn how to add 1 + 1 anymore. Oh, yeah. You've done that, been there, you know. So you're here to learn really powerful lessons. And to do that, you need more difficult situations to arise. So you find that older souls basically come to incarnate with a package deal. And the package deal is essentially, look, I'm going to pay off my liabilities this lifetime, and I'm just going to pay off so much of my negative karmas because this is what I want to learn.
Scary.
Yeah, it's scary, but this is why we are here. I mean, you know, the point of old souls is that we are here to help the younger souls. Yeah. So then we become teachers. Like, for instance, what you're doing.
Like you.
Yeah, and me and you and people that come on your show, you know, everybody that is involved with this sort of thing right now is basically because they're older souls and they're looking for something deeper that they can connect with. Yeah. I mean, they're tired. It's like if they're younger, then they would be in bars and in nightclubs, you know. I mean, not that anything is wrong with that, but, you know, they wouldn't be seeking this because this is something like, oh, it's really boring. I mean, it's woo-woo and stuff like that. Oh, yeah. But it's the older souls that want to know something that is deeper so that we can gain wisdom. And that's what they design their lives in such a way that that is so difficult. I mean, I would say that most of my life has been horrendous. But that's the reason why I've gained so much wisdom, that I can relate to people. And because I can relate to them, I can be empathetic and I can hold their hands and help them get out of it.
You know, a lot of the blog members who have suffered tragedies, especially the loss of a child, that's where they begin their spiritual journey, you know? And so sometimes it takes something awful to put people on that path, whether that they were that person who's ordering, you know, margaritas at a bar the day before or not.
Exactly. And that the reason why you are doing here, the reason why we're having this conversation is because Erik left you.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. And
well, that's true.
Yeah. And so many people are being benefited from this transaction, from this exposure. Yeah. Because they all felt it, but they didn't have a way to validate it.
Yeah.
And so this channel, what you're doing with Erik, is actually validating a lot of people what they already felt, but they didn't have. You see, because we're in the Dark Ages and with the advent of Christianity and other religions, especially the Abrahamic religions, they sort of disempowered us. Like if you look at
true.
Yeah, the Old Testament had reincarnation in it.
Yes.
Constantine
yes.
took it out.
At the Council of Trent or something, took that out, and about mediums and yeah.
Right. Exactly. So now we're in the church will say, hey, you know, reincarnation doesn't exist. That's not true. If you look at any old tradition, any wise tradition from around the world, reincarnation was definitely part of life.
What about the Kabbalah? Was that?
Yes.
That was considered a mystic, old, yeah. So we should really revisit some of those.
Oh, yes.
Learn
And
more about the ancient mystics and the Kabbalah and all that, yeah.
In fact, I did some studies, and before I got into the Indian tradition, and I explored the Incas, the Mayans, the Aborigines, the Hopis, and also the ancient Egyptians. And what we find that they have a lot more in common than we do today with them. So we are pretty much in the dark and in the blind, and we feel sometimes that we know it all because of our advances in science. But yes, we do know more in terms of the material realm, but in terms of the spirit, in terms of our spiritual growth, we're totally bankrupt.
Well, I think the material science also set us back eons too, because it led us to believe, and I was one of those people, that something does not exist unless you can perceive it with one of your senses or measure it with an instrument. But now science is coming around, and they're discovering that there are parallel dimensions, that the soul is made of neutrinos and all sorts of cool stuff. So the gap is being bridged. Now, let me ask you this. Are there brand new souls that are created, or is every soul always has been there, basically?
So it's basically like, a soul gets into this Ferris wheel.
Oh, yeah.
We get into this cycle. So once we get into this cycle, there are new souls coming in and there are older souls around. That's why we can distinguish between old souls and young souls.
But is there a soul that's like a soul for the very first time today?
Yes, all the time. It happens all the time. So the old souls are dying because it's a cycle. Remember the cycle. So it's like the water. You can say, did all the water in the ocean evaporate? No. The water actually evaporates, and then there's water coming in. So because it's a contained cycle.
All right. So going back to source, death of the soul. Splitting off from source, brand new soul. Okay. What about angels? They don't reincarnate, do they? I just have a couple more questions.
They do. They ascend, and this is the interesting thing. Like Erik and all the angels and the guides that we have, what they do is they serve us, and by serving, they ascend, which is a lot longer to ascend. And one of the fast ways to ascend is to actually reincarnate as in a human form, because then we are presented with the dualities of good and bad, or evil and good. And in that duality, we exercise our free will to learn. And so that's why you find all these angels and ascended beings, what they want to do is they want to incarnate as human beings. So that's why getting a human life is like winning a lottery. And I tell people, how many people do you know that has won a lottery? And when we do win a lottery, what do we do with our lives?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the person. Yeah. Well, so angels can incarnate into a human body? So there are
if they have
angels,
the right,
they're earth angels, basically. Okay.
So what happens is all our guides, for instance, all our guides and angels, there's many layers of it. And so in those layers, some of them, depending on the karmas that they have with other people, they can incarnate. So in order to reincarnate, you have to have all the conditions there. That means there is a family, a parent, the parents need to get together. That means you have to have karma with your parents in order to be born. And then you have to have karmas in that particular life and the people you associate with or go to school with or work with, so all those conditions have to be in place before we can incarnate. So it's not really easy to have all those conditions, because we're talking about a multitude of factors in place in order to incarnate. So it's like the Matrix, you've seen the movie where so that's exactly the Matrix, which is like on multi-dimensional matrix, that all of that has to be in place in order for us to reincarnate. So it's not easy. And that's why I say that getting a human body is like winning a lottery. It's something that we need to treasure and appreciate and really use that in the most positive sense that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Under what circumstances should somebody be regressed or benefit by being regressed to a past or future life? I mean, maybe if they have a sore hip and they find out they were stabbed by a soldier in the hip, maybe that pain will go away. I don't know what circumstances would it be valuable for?
So the only time, and it happens with all of us, the only time we get exposed or peek into our past lives is because it serves a purpose in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no reason to know.
Yeah.
All our 800,000 lifetimes. Not only that, we do not want to re-experience all the pain we've experienced in the past.
No.
That's why we forget.
Yes.
But then, many times we take this pain that we're experiencing now and we blame ourselves. And sometimes we don't understand. So what happens is a lot of the sicknesses and the pain we experience in this lifetime is because we have to heal something that might have happened in the past.
Or phobias.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So again, the entire point is for us to gain wisdom, to learn from that event, right?
Yeah.
So the event could have been in this particular lifetime that we're trying to learn, or that we need to learn something from a past life. And you see, what happens is we do not go to past life situations or past life exploration simply because we think that's crazy, that's not real, and all that. But by going there, we then begin to believe in reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, when you see kids with birthmarks, for instance,
yeah,
it was an incident that happened in a past life, the very last life. So they carry it all over this lifetime. So sometimes, like for instance, we need to know what happened in the past in order to heal in this lifetime. So I find that some of my students or some of the people I've been working with, they have chronic issues or they have situations, and when I talk to them and I realize, oh my God, there's something happened in the past life and this is the situation, immediately the problem disappears.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember I always had a horrible fear of public speaking, and so I found out that I was like in the Roman Senate, and I stood up to protest something, and I got killed somehow. And so it went away. I'm not afraid too much of public speaking anymore. So
I thought you said you were the person who killed Caesar.
no, I wasn't that important. No, I was somebody who stood up in an arena. And
so here's the thing: every challenge we have in life, every problem, without exception, is something. It's an opportunity for us to grow. Period. So if you cannot do public speaking, you have fear for public speaking, that's exactly what you need to learn in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So every fear that we have is something that we need to address and heal or get over it. And we need to work deliberately to heal that, resolve it. And sometimes it means that we have to tap into old past lives to figure out the source of it, so
or
we can
future lives, right? I mean, we could tap into a future life, right?
We can also tap into future lives. I've not done a lot of work in that area, but yeah.
What about in between lives where you can see yourself with the panel or whatever goes on there, making your spiritual contract, so you can kind of figure out your spiritual mission? Isn't that kind of like cheating?
No, it's not cheating, because it's like, remember the example of liabilities and assets. This is your balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
So you say, hey, I want to make an investment. I want to buy a house. And you can't say, I want to buy a mansion that's $5 billion and you have got like $100,000 in the bank. So you got to sit with your financial advisors, who would then tell you, well, based on your liabilities and your assets, you can afford maybe $100,000 house. So we totally base our lives entirely on our liability and assets in terms of our karmic accounts.
Right.
So we call that the Akashic records, essentially.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
It seemed like going in between lives to look at your spiritual contract and what you planned would be helpful for people who feel like they are off their spiritual path. They're confused about what their spiritual mission is, or what they came here to do, to accomplish.
That's right. And one of the things that, like, the kind of work you guys are doing and the kind of work we're doing is essentially helping people get on track. So Indian astrology helps. Some of the mediums, they really help people to get back on track. I mean, some of the work that you guys are doing is really, truly amazing.
I am so grateful for them. I'm just pretty much a secretary, but
so much relief. Yeah.
But anyway,
so much, yeah.
Thank you so much. You guys, you need to check this guy out. I will put his website down here. Let me see if I remember it. It's SVATMANANDA.org.
That's right. I mean,
oh my God, it's a miracle.
That is a miracle. I mean, sometimes I don't even remember it myself.
Sure. Thank you so much. Oh, I really want you to be on the radio show. You're getting so popular amongst my peeps. So that's awesome.
Good. I'm happy to show up.
You're about to travel pretty soon, right?
I'm going, but I will have time during the week.
Okay.
To be able to do it. I tend to get a little busy over the weekends, but because that's when I'm teaching. But otherwise, during the weekdays, I'm quite available.
And again, you have so much to offer people. You can teach them how to live as if they are in the one. Anything else you want to share with people?
I mean, basically, it's how to make our lives better. It's basically how do you improve your own lives. And you can do that with astrology. You can do that with health. You need good health to have a good mind. You need a good mind to be able to come into spirituality. So basically, it's all sequential. So it's astrology, health, just dealing with day-to-day life in the most positive way. One of the things that I'm trying to do is actually get a movement going in learning how to love in difficult situations, and I hope
that sounds so good. I could have used that with
we
my
all
father. Oh my God. And my mother. Wow. Let me know if we could help in any way. Okay.
Right. So one of the things that people can do is maybe post their questions, and we can see what the demand is, and from that then we can come up with something. But I'm working on a program where I can help people and teach them how to love.
Where do you want them
to love?
Do you want them to post that
on your site?
On my site.
Can email, or they can do it on your site, or they can email me. And once I get those questions, then I can see what the need is at this point.
And your email address is on your. Is it on your site?
It's on my website, or you can, I can give it to you, which is again SVATMANDA@gmail.com.
Easy enough. All right. Thank you. I still love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Bye.